Saludos. Once again, it's Gabe Morales with Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians. We have been covering Mexican Mafia members over the past 60 plus years. We're returning to the P last names, as in Paul. First, I have Randy Peches, who was from Chino. He had a D number, 26227, and was made MA sometime in the mid-1990s. I understand that he was at Tehachapi in 2012 and then got out but came back with an A as an alpha number. I as in Indio, 7604 number. He did some time on that and then evidently was released, as I show. He's no longer in custody on that one. There was David, a.k.a. Frisco Dave, also known as Puerto Rican Davi from San Fran. I believe he had a B number and was MA in the 1970s, and I believe made his bones after he killed a guy named Don Ramirez in February of 1976. I show he was still at SQ in 1983, but I believe was released sometime in the 80s and disappeared off the radar. There was Manuel Buff Perez from Eastside Clover. He had a B number, 33583. I show that he was in San Quentin in 1971 and was active with the MA, but had dropped out by 1974 after I believe he caught a case in Texas, put on death row, and given life without parole. There was Salvador Perez, who I discussed on a previous episode. Sergio is from Pacas and had a J number, 47812. I show he was only associate in 2006, but later on was sponsored by Güero Sherm Leon. He was very active at Pelican Bay on Sea Yard in 2001. Eventually, he was sent to Corcoran Shoe and validated. He came back to Pelican Bay in 2012, and then after they started letting many of the guys out of the shoe, he was housed in general population in 2016. Being that he worked closely with Güero Sherm, he went on trial in San Diego on federal charges and was convicted and did some time in the BOP under number 95336-198. He then returned to California to do some more time on his J number and is currently housed at Calipatria State Prison. There was Raymond Perez Garcia, also known as Chavo, from Bakers, Barrio Lomas. He had a B number, 27364, and was known even as a youngster as being proud of being with the Black Hand, as seen here. He was involved in the hit on Death Row Joe and Woodsy Reyes at San Quentin in 1972. He then was moved to Folsom Prison in 1973, where he is seen here in a picture with Mo and Cheetah, and Daniel Spider Aliaga. He was released in 1976, but then caught a murder case. He re-entered the system under K number 12952, and was very influential at Pelican Bay for many years, including being involved in the end of hostilities agreement, also known as the peace talks. He was housed at Folsom in 2016 and passed away in June of 2019. There was a lot of guys who didn't like Chavo as they felt he abused his authority and was a bully. But there also was many people who admired and respected him for holding it down for so many years in La M. There was Robert Pelon Perez Sanchez, who I have notes had connections to El Hoyo Maravilla, but also to Norwalk. He had an A number, 43362, and was affiliated with the MA around 1964 at Folsom Prison. I've seen him on a roll call that was generated around 1967, and he paroled in 1974. He came back with a B number, 34870, and I understand eventually dropped out. Michael Flo Perry. I'm not sure where he's from, but I think he may be from San Diego and might have been affiliated with BAT. Michael Flo Perry had a C number, 17699, and was made MA sometime in the 1980s. I understand that he disrespected Tupi Hernandez, and Tupi wanted him killed in 1991. He then disrespected Frankie B, and Frankie B wanted him killed in 1993. I'm not sure if they ever caught up to Flacco. I haven't heard about him in many years now. Then there was Benjamin Toppo Peters from El Hoyo Soto. Toppo was a longtime Emero, one of the originals, and had an A number, 75418. He hit the Youth Authority in February 1957, before the MA took off. As I stated previously, Jesse Weddle Buff didn't hit the yard until the summer of 57. Toppo paroled in April of 1958, just as the MA was getting off the ground. He caught an assault case in East LA in 1959, and then fled down to Tijuana in the 1960s, where he was working for Harry Buckley Gamboa and Joe Morgan down in Baja. As I mentioned in the Robert Mocha Morel episode, Detective Morel went down to Mexico with the serious goal of extraditing Toppo back to the United States. He did it under some rather unscrupulous methods, but the judge upheld Toppo's conviction and he was sent to prison. He was a major fixture at Soledad and Folsom in the 1970s and participated in multiple homicides by his own hand or by his orders over the years. It is said that he personally executed a guy in 1980 by the name of Pablo Ruok. I had Toppo at New Folsom segregation in 1992, and I recall that when the movie American Me came out, he was not happy about how his friends Cheyenne Cadena and Joe Morgan were depicted in that movie. After Morgan died in the fall of 1993, Toppo considered himself to be the godfather of the MMA. And he rallied his supporters and engaged in a war against Cuate Grajeda and Tupi Hernandez, amongst others. Toppo was indicted on a major RICO case with other Ameros and sent to federal prison under BOP number 04879-112. And he died in February 2001. There was Daniel Michael Pina, known as Danny Boy, the Hazard. He had a C number 15021. He was at Folsom Prison in 1986 when he, along with MMA member Stump Valencia, viciously attacked and stabbed Mo Farrell. Mo was sent out to UC Davis Medical Center, whereby he pulled out his life-saving equipment and died at the hospital. Although I believe Danny Boy had been put up for sponsorship prior to the hit on Mo, I was actually working the yard gun in New Folsom Violence Control Unit when he was validated by the gang unit 5 years later, in 1991. I remember this very clearly because often guys would go out into the yard in just their white chones and white t-shirts, and the rest of the camaradas and canales draped a coat over Danny Boy like he was a king and patted him on the back and congratulated him. I listened to the whole thing while I was working the gun. That whole unit was full of Mexican Mafia members and Aryan Brotherhood, or associates. It's kind of interesting because although he was aligned with Stump at that time, he later on aligned with the Toppo Peters, boxer Enriquez Carr, against Stump in Cuate Grajeda. Understand that Danny Boy was sold with Jaco Padilla in 2003, was at Salinas Valley State Prison as of at least 2020 through 21, and is currently housed at Centinelo State Prison. There is Ruben Aztec, codename Tijotzin Pina from Bakers. He had a B number 93674 and was made MA by at least the early 1980s, whereby he was incarcerated on a drug charge. He paroled in 1980 and then committed a robbery in 1983, whereby he got C number 59020. He ended up getting out on that and then committing a bank robbery, where he was sent to Lompoc and did many years in the BOP. He was released in November of 2012. There was Jose Sluggo Pineda from El Paso, Texas. He had an A number 44139 and was born in 1932. Sluggo was made MA in the 1960s and was active at Folsom Prison in the early 70s, paroled in May of 1974, and then was in and out in the late 1980s. Finally, he was murdered on October 15, 1988, when he had his throat cut by Güero Shai Shyrock and stabbed over 40 times. This homicide was allegedly committed by Güero Shai for Sluggo ripping off Toppo Peter's mom and disrespecting her. There was Richie Pinuelos out of Brole, El Centro area. He was committed to CRC in 1967 and then hit CIM in 1970 with the B number 28393. I show he was MA by the early 70s, but then switched to Familia Cinco in 73. I'm not sure how, but it appears they accepted him back, as I show he was validated MA still until 2004. He got out and then caught a robbery case in 1981. He was housed at San Quentin in 83 and Folsom in 1986. He then paroled in 1988, but returned to Tehachapi. He committed a robbery in 1989 and then was released again, and I understand died in a car accident. There was Patrick Pato Ponce from Imperial County. He had an A as an Alpha, E as an Edward number 4140. Understand that he was validated MA by at least 2005 and held the keys for Richard Buchanan, Cheeks, in 2006. I show that he was housed at Kern Valley State Prison in 2012 and is currently housed at Solano State Prison. There was Jose, a.k.a. Big Joe Ponce Castillo, who's from Orange County Alley Boys. He has a large AB on his chest. Do not mistake that for Aryan Brotherhood. Big Joe caught a C number, 66337, while he was in CDC, and ended up getting popped on federal charges under BOP number 14005-112. Big Joe has several prominent Mexican Mafia indicators and is very proud of his MA status, as seen here. He was housed at Coleman from 2020 to 2022 and is currently housed at the ADX, where he is doing a life sentence. There's Paul Richard Huero Tres Portillo from Hazard. He had a B number, 37560, and I show was made MA in the early 70s. He did an attempted hit on a West Familia member and also committed a murder in the LA County Jail in 1977. Huero Tres was involved in several bank robberies, as seen here in this picture. He was then sent off to the feds under BOP number 68438-012. He was released in September of 1990, and then I understand went to Maui with some of the other meadows and became part of that Hawaii MA faction that I've talked about before. That's it for the P last names. I'd like to end with a little message. I've been keeping my sermons short, but this came from my brother Cook, who gives good advice and mentorship to youngsters and also gives some advice that us old folks could use. And that is, a mistake that makes you humble is better than an achievement that makes you arrogant. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your support. I hope you learned something new and are still enjoying my spill on Mexican Mafia members over the past 60 plus years. For now, this is Gabe Morales signing off for Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians.
Open your eyes.